This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning into the program. It's Thursday, December the 11th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Matt Barron is sitting in the producer's chair this morning. You'll be speaking with Matt when you give us a call to get in the queue and on the air. The topic, up to you. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. Stuck a little hockey here to get it going. So I am looking forward to the Winter Olympics. And, of course, the first game for Team Canada is going to be against Czechia on the 12th of February. There's been already 6 players named to the team. We think by the end of this week, about 80% of the roster will be announced. The 6 who've already got the nod: Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, Connor McDavid, Braden Point, and Sam Reinhart. Pretty solid 6 players. But here's the weird story, and I've been following this for a little while. The rink isn't even built yet. And, you know, even when we talked about hosting the Canada Games here in town or some national events, you have to have the dimensions right to hit national standards, which kept some of our facilities out of the running. And we've had to do some upgrades to accommodate national events here, just in the province. But for the Olympics, so the hockey rinks that are being built, and the ice isn't even down yet, they're not even as big as NHL rinks. I mean, we're used to seeing the players go abroad, play in Europe on European-sized rinks, but these are going to be smaller than NHL rinks. It's so weird. You'd think there'd be some minimum standards to host Olympic Games. So the IOC says, you know, it's not going to jeopardize public safety. The NHL doesn't really agree. So whether it be Bettman or Daly, of course, the 2 gentlemen at the head of the National Hockey League, they still have growing concerns about whether or not the ice itself was going to be safe and conducive to that level of competitive hockey. But the rink isn't even as big as an NHL rink. So weird. Anyway, in the women's hockey, the rivalry series continued last night, Game 3 between Canada and the United States, and we got smoked. 10-4 for the Americans last night. I think it's the first time the ladies team has ever given up 10 goals in one of these major competitions, but boy, oh boy, that's not good. All right, let's get into the courts. So, interesting observation from former Crown Prosecutor Mike Murray, who has joined us on this program many times in the past. He's always welcome. And this is about provincial court operations, so the impact that it may have outside the walls. So we know we're talking about traffic court and civil hearings and other circuit courts, so they've had operations suspended since the 28th of November. Mr. Murray makes an interesting observation. Human nature is pretty clear in that if you think you can get away with something, you'll probably try. And in this case, he goes on to opine that because traffic tickets may indeed end up getting thrown out because of length of time, inability to challenge a ticket in court, that if people think that's the case, then maybe, just maybe, they'll display even more reckless behavior behind the wheel. Speeding, dangerous driving, whatever the case may be. I don't know what the likelihood of that is, but it's a fair observation because you know it to be true. If people know, or at least think they can get away with something, they're going to try it. So it's just one of those complications with access to justice being denied insofar as whatever's causing this operation suspension. Staffing is what it feels like. And it's good to know there's been a working group struck, but that doesn't change anything today. If it's staffing, the working group can only point out the obvious. We need to hire more staff. So that's an interesting thought on what people might be willing to attempt because they think their tickets will probably eventually get thrown out if there's no opportunity to challenge in court. Your thoughts? Okay, this one obviously much more serious and complicated. Okay, so you've heard the story of a 32-year-old man arrested for and accused of 2 counts of attempted murder, 3 counts of assault with a weapon, 3 counts of assault causing bodily harm, and this was all in relation to attack on 3 residents at a St. John's apartment building. The man arrested is 32-year-old Mitchell Rose. To begin with, obviously, feel terrible for those who have been victimized. And they're all in hospital, one in critical condition. So these are very, very serious crimes. I'm not going to necessarily go so far, and I don't even know if it's required to put a label on it, but some people will think and say that Mitchell Rose is also a victim. And here's why they think it. So Mitchell Rose, 19 or 20 years of age, was diagnosed with PTSD. Eventually got a formal diagnosis of schizophrenia. His mother and sister in the recent past has seen him spiral, deepening state of psychosis. and so consequently quite worried about Mitchell as to whether or not he'd harm himself and possibly even others, and now this has happened. At one point, he was on what they call a community treatment order. It's a pretty important distinction. It's a designation issued by a psychiatrist that can provide mandatory and involuntary care to a person with severe mental illness. Unbeknownst to the family, he was released from this designation. I mean, for someone who may indeed be incapable of making sound decisions, it seems outrageous to me that the system failed him so miserably and consequently failed the 3 victims, the alleged victims, I guess, at this moment in time. So he's arrested, which of course nobody has any choice, but that designation came with a lot of caveats. So with Mr. Rose likely unable to make good decisions, be a risk to himself or others, when that designation went away, so did the public safety aspect. So at the RNC's Mental Health Crisis Response Unit, they don't have the authority that's under that act. So they can go to his apartment, upon request of his mother and sister. They can knock, and Mitchell Rose simply said, I don't want to talk to you. You can't come in. And so all they could do, as told by Mitchell's mother, is simply say, well, if you feel unwell or if you deepen into some sort of crisis, call 811. That's not much to offer for someone who was obviously in this state of mind. And I'm not a medical health professional, so I don't know how to refer to things as psychosis and what have you, but pretty clear that's what's happened here. So again, to begin with, I feel terrible for the victims. They must have been terrified, and the injuries look and sound quite serious and severe. But how can this happen? How can this possibly happen? To the victims, to public safety, to the Rose family. If there's someone, a psychiatrist has deemed this person to have to be assigned this designation, what changed? The ability for them to monitor and to ensure that Mitchell Rose is taking his medications is no risk to himself or others, but this happened. So this is a distinct failing in the system. It obviously is. If you were ever in a position to get this designation, then obviously consultation with family, people who know this person the best, are closest to them, will see them on a frequent or daily basis to not even know that he was no longer inside this community treatment order. Anyway, it's a terrible story, and it is complicated. And I'm not here, I don't even know why we should try to designate a level of grief or sadness for one group or another, but the victims, I feel absolutely terrible for them. They had no idea what was coming, and it was extremely serious. Mitchell Rose had no idea what was coming because he was in a state of mind that did not allow him to make good decisions. Oh boy, you want to talk about it? We can do it. And then this story, Austin Deer, who was pled guilty to 2 charges of dangerous driving causing death. So he's in the sentencing phase, and I don't know what the sentence is going to be. And I know it's been particularly tense situation. RNC or RCMP have had to be on site in Clarenville because people are obviously and justifiably angry with what Mr. Deer has done, and 2 women are dead. So we'll see what the end result will be. But the question that's asked of me all the time, and I'm not so sure how important this question might be, but I get it repeatedly, especially a lot of emails on it the last couple of days because the sentencing phase is on, is who's paying these legal bills? Is it the union? Is it NAPE, where Mr. Deer had worked, or not? And I don't know. I think these are NAPE members wondering, and the short answer is I don't know. But if it's something you think is important to you, then we can absolutely talk about it here on the program. Okay. Boy, they were tricky. Let's get into some healthcare action, and in this case, wait times. People, understandably, get quite worried when they've visited their family doctor, given a referral to a specialist for a diagnostics and or a procedure of some kind, and the wait times are severe. I was surprised to hear, and this based on a study coming from the Fraser Institute, a think tank that I think is quite fair to label them as very conservative. So in this province, wait times back in 1993 to get the actual treatment was 10.6 weeks. Now it's 43.5 weeks. Boy, oh boy. But I was also quite surprised to read that this province has the lowest wait times in Atlantic Canada. New Brunswick had the worst. In New Brunswick in 1993 it was 12.3 weeks. Now it's 60.9 weeks. And let's just give some numbers from across the country. And there's a reason why I'm doing this. BC went from 10.4 to 30.2. Alberta went from 10.5 to 36. Saskatchewan went from 9.8 to 34.8. Manitoba 10.5 to 39.1. Quebec 7.3 to 32.5. I gave you New Brunswick. Here's PEI. Went from 17.1 to 49.7. This province 43.5. Overall national average 9.3 weeks to 28.6. The lowest wait times in the country, Ontario. Which I guess we have to incorporate some of what might be the factors that see that reduced wait time in the province of Ontario, even though that's still a long time to wait, isn't it? So they're moving into phase 2 to expand the number of private clinics offering publicly funded healthcare inside a private setting. It's going to roll out early next year. And this is going to be 4 additional centres offering hip and knee replacements. The province is spending $125 million over 2 years, going to add up to 20,000 orthopedic surgeries at these community clinics. Okay. I suppose this plays some role in the reduced wait times in the province of Ontario, and they're also expanding MRI into the private setting as well. For me, diagnostic imaging is a different kettle of fish versus surgical procedures. What some people who worry about expansion of private healthcare, and there's plenty of private healthcare in this country already, what some of the concern might be is if we don't adopt a bit more of a hybrid European type of model, where doctors who were in the public sector move into the private, they still have to move back into the public sector at times to provide care, because not everyone's going to be able to afford to go to a private clinic, right? Right. Then some additional concerns voiced by others, and many, is that if doctors can choose to move into the private sector, then they will have the ability to refuse some patients, which already happens. You know, there's doctors out there who won't take you on if you're a smoker or if you're more morbidly obese, what have you. So does the queue get that much relief if we expand private health care? And a lot of this is in contravention of the Canada Health Act, but the wiggle room here, or the workaround available, is they can publicly fund it in a private setting. So is that going to be the next wave of provincial moves in this country? You see it in Alberta. You can certainly see it in Ontario. And I think if you ask the general tax-paying public, they just want to see a healthcare professional. But it'll be interesting to get your thoughts on that, because that is a certain big change of what's been happening. All right, last one on healthcare. So the province's highest billing doctor is now being suspended. That's Dr. Harry Dang. Okay, so this is on behalf of the College of Physicians and Surgeons. What we don't know, and this was first published at All Newfoundland and Labrador, we don't know why the license has been suspended, but I think it would be interesting to find out. He's only been in the healthcare profession in this province for a couple of years, and these are records available publicly. He had billed the province $720,000 up to the end of the 2023-2024 fiscal year. In his second year, Dang became the highest billing fee-for-service doctor in the province, with $4.9 million in services billed to the Medical Care Plan, MCP. So next closest was $2.5 million. So just about double billings for Dr. Dang. So he's got a great academic background. Top of his class at the University of Toronto, a Bachelor of Science degree. He placed in the 99th percentile on his medical college admission test, MCAT, and entered med school a year early. Okay. Graduated medical degree from the University of Ottawa in 2018. First in his class in ophthalmology. Bunch of awards and scholarships. Okay, that's all great. But is there something about the amount of money billed by Dr. Dang? And why is that important? Because it is important. And it'd be nice to know if we're going to see any information publicly disclosed on that front, but yeah. All right, maybe I'm just particularly interested in this next topic, and I've talked about it a couple of times this week. I'm going to do it again. It's about how we all use social media. It can be pretty gross. And so we all know, as of yesterday, the law changed in Australia. So youth under the age of 16 were banned from social media platforms. Now, it's probably not going to work. I mean, the workarounds are certainly available there, but it does beg a lot of questions about social media usage. You know, I've been reading different points of view on it, different perspectives, and it goes all the way from this is government overreach to pointing fingers of blame at government for this move. Okay, I can buy that. You know, government overreach is something we could all and should be wary of, but what gets lost in many people's thoughts on government overreach is, what about the kids? I mean, isn't that the ultimate question here? Obviously, unless there's some really heavy-handed legislation to deal with the tech companies, they're not going to do anything. I mean, subscribers and clicks drives revenue. So, yeah, we can talk about government's role here, but I think the prime area of concern for me, anyway, would be about youth and what it's doing to them if they're so active on social media. It'd be nice to have a real scientific study into, or survey, pardon me, because there's plenty of scientific studies that have showed the downsides of social media. But let's get some conversation going there. It's basically going to be left up to parents for youth in Australia to be encouraged to abide by the ban, and or for just some good guidelines being brought forward in the home about how social media is utilized. If it has been detrimental to so many young people, and so many adults, I would also suggest, is some actual public discourse, honest, open and frank, mature conversation is long overdue, because we see what's happening. And Australia's taking this move, and the world will be watching. And the workarounds are readily available. They're already talking about it as youth in that country. And just because we just mentioned the age of 16, I'm going to float it back out there just so I can take another few swats. I think the time has come to talk about lowering the voting age to 16. I do. I mean, just think about it. If I'm 16 years of age and I'm working and paying taxes, but I don't have a say, I'm not so sure how fair that is. And then the argument is, well, they don't know enough about the world to cast a vote. I'm not so sure how accurate that might be. Because remember, how many people out there will simply vote for the party because they always did? You know? Or how many people out there really don't follow much in the way of policy, but just follow along with the pop culture impact, the personality impact, the gravitas, the charisma, as opposed to actually what that person is saying behind the glossy smile and the firm handshake. But lower the voting age to 16? I don't know. I kind of like it. I'll get smoked for that one. All right. A couple more very quick ones. And it's hard to know where the Americans' heads are on some of these issues, but people have been wondering whether or not this was coming, and apparently it's coming, and maybe very, very soon. Visitors to the United States, including countries like, let's see here, I had a list of countries that they were talking about. Do I even have the right thing? Yeah, okay. So this proposal posted on the Federal Register by U.S. Customs Border Protection. They're saying that coming from other countries that are part of the visa waiver program, so visiting for less than 90 days, they're going to have to give up more of their personal information. Citizens from 42 countries that have been named, including the United Kingdom, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, Israel, Qatar, as well as many other European countries. Canada, for now, is exempt. Your passport is all you need to get in the United States. And, of course, whether or not you have a criminal background. Okay, so they're going to have mandatory request of high-value data elements, including a person's phone number and email addresses over the prior 5 years, plus close family members' names and birth dates, along with their birthplaces, residences, phone numbers over the previous 5 years. It used to be optional, and now they're going to have a look through your social media. This is pretty wild stuff. Right now, Canada's exempt, but as we know, that could change with the blink of an eye because of the unpredictable nature of the current administration. So here's, according to the guidelines, applicants are asked to set their profiles to public, and lack of an online social media presence could be seen as a negative that may be held against them in the application process. The State Department has said they are going to vet applicants for student visas for, get this, hostile attitudes towards our citizens, culture, government, institutions, or founding principles. So if you got something bad to say about what's going on in the United States today or sometime in the past 5 years, that might be enough reason to keep you out. Boy, oh boy. All right, I was going to get into a few more, but how are we doing on the phone, Matt? I haven't been looking at the phone lines. Is anybody out there listening? How are we doing on the phones there, Matt? This morning I haven't been looking. All right, this is last two. Because when high-profile people have decided amongst themselves and their family to get medical assistance in dying, it gets back into the news headlines. And in this case, it's the story of Robert Munsch, beloved children's author. So he is ill and has for years been approved to get medical assistance in dying. And, you know, you hear from some corners that that's the go-to offer, and you're not wrong. When we hear stories of members of the Canadian military who are veterans and they have some sort of issue, and the first thing they're offered, well, have you considered medical assistance in dying? It's absolutely inappropriate. That's not how MAID should have been designed. It's certainly not how it should be delivered. The process is pretty comprehensive. It's not just as willy-nilly as you can walk into a doctor's office and never walk out again. But I know it's a very tricky conversation. But as we say all the time, the trickiest conversation is probably the most important to have. Last one, and this on a personal note. I've been working with Dave Williams as my producer for years. I've grown up around the Williams family and went to school. We all went to the same schools. I've only ever known Dave Williams' father as Mr. Williams. For a lifetime, that's all I called him, was Mr. Williams. But sadly, after a pretty long stint of being unwell, Dave's dad died. So my deepest condolences to the Williams family. And I knew Mr. Williams a little bit, but imagine, I don't know his first name because I've only ever called him Mr. Williams. And I don't really feel like bugging Dave here today, but we're really sad to hear your loss, David. So between Dana and Tara and Greg and Mrs. Williams, I'm really sorry to know that this has happened. We all feel terrible, and we want to offer our sincere condolences to you and to all his friends. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. You can follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, we've been talking a bit of Beta Nord. Equinor's tune has changed somewhat on jobs that might come to this province. Bob Fiander is the Executive Director of Trades NL. He kicks it off, and then it's you. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning to the Executive Director at Trades NL. That's Bob Fiander. Good morning, Bob. Greg, can you put that on for me? My clicker isn't working. Morning, Bob. You're on the air.
Paddy.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
Not too bad at all. Thanks for asking. All right, let's get into it. So for the longest while, Equinor was pretty clear. Subsea work would be done here, topsides to be done elsewhere. I guess through conversations, possibly with fellas like you and Premier Wakeham, they are going to offer a local expression of interest with some caveats based on cost and schedule. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I want to commend the Premier for his ongoing commitment to this issue and to the workers in the province. Recently, he very publicly endorsed that he is a pro-trade union Premier. And I think that's important. It didn't get picked up by the media. I don't know why. It's a great. It's certainly newsworthy. And also to the developer Equinor for coming to the plate. Good potential here now that we're going to construct some of those modules. So we have the commitment to open the EOI up for modular construction to occur here in the province. There are some concerns arising from that EOI, in my opinion.
Such as?
Well, there are a couple of things that come to mind. The modules, if they're designed in such a manner that they're too big, gives a disadvantage to the people and the contractors in the province. And that's covered off in the benefits guidelines. But there's potential for that, and we don't need that. That's the whole purpose of modular construction, so you can break them down into manageable pieces. There's better quality, better productivity, better safety. The other thing is, I'm not sure that the contractors are going to come to the plate or joint ventures. There's a feel in this industry right now that this may be only a tick in the box. And if this is only a tick in the box, it costs contractors and their joint ventures a lot of money to come out, put a bid package together for these modules, and they want to be making sure that they're not wasting their time and resources to get full consideration for this work.
And that's the trick
so those
here.
Those are a couple of concerns.
Yeah, no, I can understand that in full. Because if you feel like the fix is in, and that's not fair because that's not what we're talking about here, but if you feel like you will not have a legitimate fair shot at a contract, companies may indeed just say, I'm not going through the exercise, because you're right. It's not simple as, putting pen to paper and saying, okay, so let's see here, let's bid $10 million. It's a comprehensive package required to even have an approved or an accepted return to these EOIs. So you probably have a pretty fair point there, Bob. If people don't think there's a real opportunity there, they'll just not waste the money and the time.
I think it's a real concern, and I think some of the answers lie in our legislation. In the benefits guide, CNL OPB updated the benefits plan guidelines in October 2024. Just take it quickly. I'll pick out a few things here and there because there's a lot of information in this document. But 2.2 is full and fair opportunity. So the regulator interprets full and fair opportunity to mean the companies in Newfoundland and Labrador and other parts of Canada are afforded the same opportunity to participate in all aspects of a project. Proponents should describe how their contracting strategies will not unfairly disadvantage Canadian and Newfoundland and Labrador suppliers, and how they will apply full and fair principle in their procurement activities. So that's really important. It gives a level of comfort. We need to know that that's there.
Yeah. So, realistically speaking, can anything change at the CNLOPB level or at the provincial level to change the process before Equinor makes a final investment decision, which feels like it's coming maybe late next year, early 27?
Look, again, Paddy, there's all kinds of information that guides us in this document. And another thing, first consideration for employment. Employment of Canadians, in particular, members of the labour force of the province, essential feature of governments as enshrined in the Accord Acts. concerning offshore resource development. The first consideration for employment requires that the proponent and its contractors look first to Newfoundland and Labrador labour market to meet their human resources requirements. I don't see that they've done that here on the construction piece at all. In fact, it's moved from zero construction in the 2018 framework agreement to a potential now of construction. And we need that comfort now from federal and provincial governments that this is going to get over the line.
How do we ensure that we don't repeat what ExxonMobil did back with the Hebron work? Is they simply said, okay, we know what the benefits agreement says, but we're doing it our way. And our penalty, $150 million, here we go, and we're just going to move on our merry way. Because that's still a loophole available, isn't it?
Well, they have to have agreement, though, Paddy. So, again, in the document, the ministers from federally and provincially have a lot to say about that. The regulator has a lot to say about that. And they have to operate within the confines of this legislation in order to treat this correctly. And we expect that. So I'm going to make the statement here today that if this benefits plan guidelines is followed in its intention and its purpose, then there will be a lot of construction activity here for the Bay du Nord.
Yeah. I mean, you've stuck on a number like 70 to 75%, and I don't want to misquote you, but somewhere in that neighborhood for that amount of work to be done here. Is it something that happens in the industry where you do some of the topsides as opposed to if South Korea or Singapore gets it and does it all? I mean, is that something that can be broken down in more bite-sized morsels?
Sure, absolutely. Again, in the modular construction, if you look online, BWO shows you how they construct these topsides, and they're certainly all together in modular. So no issue there. We can build that. We've shown it in the past. Our productivity, quality, and safety we will deliver. If there's an issue on cost, it is not our issue, I can tell you that. We will bring everything that we need to bring to the plate. We need the federal and provincial governments involved in this to say, look, this is our resource, Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada's resource. We need to have buy-in. We need to have people working in Canada and in our province, and this is a solution to that right now.
Is there any concern with how long it's been since we've done this kind of extensive topsides work?
Absolutely not. I mean, we've done projects here in the past, so now we're back to somebody challenging our ability to build projects. We have the best people in the world for these projects. We've shown we can use our industrial expertise across many sectors, including hydro development, including refineries, including offshore installations. And if you go back, we built the Terra Nova FPSO, we built the Sea Rose FPSO, and then we've done all the North Amherst for the Sea Rose subsea here in the province. About 500,000 person hours. And from what I hear, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, the subsea that's being bid right now is only about a million person hours. So that's certainly not up to the quality or the amount of work that would be created if we do topsides here. We can do them both.
Fair enough. You've been using 14,000 as the number of people you represent that are out of work. Has that number changed?
14,000 is around accurate, Paddy. Look, some of those people may be somewhere else in the world. They may be somewhere else across Canada because we have to work. But when we have projects in this province of this magnitude, we have to take advantage of them. They don't come around often enough. Yeah,
well, that's fair enough. And who knows how many more of these types of projects will happen into the future. The last one for you. It would be an interesting, quote-unquote, problem to have if many of these things come to pass at the same time, whether it be work on the Churchill River, whether it be Bay du Nord, whether it be people from this province working on the proposed pipeline from Alberta to BC's north coast. Is that a good thing or a potentially tricky piece of business to navigate?
It's an absolute good thing. If we keep talking about how are we going to grow this province, how are we going to put Canadians to work, how are we going to put Newfoundlanders and Labradorians to work, you have to capitalise on these types of projects. Do you have to expand that and build on everything else around? Absolutely. You don't forget anything. But these projects help us keep going. They put industry in this province. It's what created the offshore industry, initial construction from Hibernia and following suit. We should not get off that path. It's been good to us.
Appreciate the time, Bob. Anything else you'd like to say?
I absolutely, I'd ask the Prime Minister Carney to develop or determine that the Bay du Nord project is a project of national interest, and there be an injection of funds, whether that be an equity stake or some sort of tax credit or incentive. But we need some help here right now. We need to make sure that the contractors are not going out and just bidding this work and it's a tick in the box. We need our governments to come to the plate, follow the benefits guidelines that are in place. We need the regulator to follow the benefit guidelines that are in place. We'll be in good shape if we do that.
Appreciate your time, Bob. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks, Paddy.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bob Fiander is the Executive Director at Trades NL. Let's get a break in. Oh, you know, someone asked me if the Outer Ring Road has been reopened around Paradise, and it has been. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back. Oops, got a bit of tango going here. Let's go. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Joe, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
Good boy. Joe, Patty. I mixed up here this morning. My first time caller.
Welcome.
I like your show there. I'm calling this morning, Patty. I don't know if you'd give me an answer to this, but I'm kind of bothered this morning. I went to get my driver's license renewed this morning. Okay, so there was 2 other individuals in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
Those people, I'm not biased, I'm not racist or anything like that, but those 2 guys had their turbans on,
Mm-hmm.
so they didn't have to remove anything, their headgear, nothing, whatever. They went in and got their picture taken, it was fine. So I went in with my ball cap on, my glasses. I had to remove my ball cap, take off my glasses to get my picture taken. Now, is that right for us as Canadians or Newfoundlanders? We got to abide by our law, or do they abide by our law or their law?
That's actually our law, as a matter of fact, and it's an interesting case study. So this is as old as the 1980s. So there was one individual East Indian, a Sikh, who challenged this in court. He was a recruit in the RCMP. So went through the courts, and then the Brian Mulroney government actually enshrined it in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And then it's been upheld by the Supreme Court since. So this has been in... so just to answer your question in short order, they're not actually following their laws, they're actually following our laws. That's been the case since the 90s.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but with our laws, we're not allowed to go in with our acts or whatever on, but... Anyway, well, that's good to know, Patty. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I didn't know it until someone asked me a similar question a number of years ago. So it actually is part of Canadian law. So it's not only for driver's licenses, but it's also for passports. It's also for being in the RCMP. It's also for being allowed to go into the Legion. Because if I went to the Legion today with my hat on, I have to take it off. But this this is part of Canadian law. And I think I'm right on the dates. It's as old as the 1980s, the initial court challenge. Then Mulroney did indeed amend the Constitution, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms for this, and it was upheld by the Supreme Court sometime in the 90s as well.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if it's right. Well, it's not right in my opinion, but I guess it's just my opinion. Everybody got an opinion.
Absolutely. I understand where you're coming from. And, just to drive that point home, that's actually following Canadian law. Whether or not people disagree with it or agree with it, that is not a cultural decision that's been made and people have just shrugged their shoulders and said, okay. It's actually been all the way to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot, Patty. Appreciate that.
I appreciate your time.
You have a great morning.
You too, pal. Bye-bye. Yeah, and you know what? I really didn't know what that was all about until, I'm going to say it's as much as a decade or so ago, someone asked me that very, very similar question. I'm not sure if it was about the Department of Motor Vehicles and driver's license photo, but yeah, and you'll hear that. And there is a distinct difference. It's about whether or not people are going to subscribe or follow our laws. And in this case, it is actually our law. And curiously, and you talk about the difference in multiculturalism and religious freedoms and stuff, whether it's a liberal leader or a conservative leader. But Mulroney, I guess PC, Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, he was actually one who opened up the Charter and made this particular intervention here. And this, I don't know if it was 1995 or 96 or 97, but this went all the way to the Supreme Court. And they upheld the government's decision at that time. And it's all about accommodation in the public service. You want me to take this one or try to get a break? All right, let's take this one. All right, let's go to line number 1. Charlie, you're on the air.
Oh, good morning, Patty.
Morning to you.
Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you, Charlie.
Patty, just a couple of things there. I wasn't prepared to go on quite yet. You remember George Carlin? George Carlin, the comedian.
Yep.
Okay. He said about drivers, have you ever noticed that when drivers are slower than us, we call them idiots. And when they drive faster than us, we call them maniacs. I thought about that the other day when you were talking about those driving lanes. But anyway, would you agree that's pretty accurate?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of George Carlin quotes that are pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Some of them aren't actually fit for public radio airwaves, but yeah.
Yeah. Paddy, that doctor who raked in $4.6 million, I don't know if you've had many discussions. I haven't heard you this week. Have you had any discussion on that?
No, but I mentioned it this morning.
Okay, I didn't hear you again. We've got a new TV system, and it's not as good for recording and listening. Anyway, I just wondered, how does somebody rack up $4.6 million without, after $1 million, somebody taking note? I mean, we're talking about ball player salaries here. What gives that can go on that long, and we probably won't recover the money? Do you think that's a rather strange thing?
Well, yes, but I think we're all just grasping at straws at this moment in time because we don't even know why he's been suspended. Is it about the billings or is it about something else? Because he's only in the business in this province for 2 years. In his first year, he billed $720,000, which then grew to $4.9 million in his second year. And the second highest billing doctor in the province billed $2.5 million. So he's about double anybody else in the province. Now, I know ophthalmology is pretty lucrative business to be in, but I'd really like to know what's behind this, to be honest.
Yeah, it's pretty strange. You would think with all the government employees and the service has plenty of them, both provincial and federal. You think there'd be a watchdog on some of this, would you not?
Well, yes, I guess is the short answer. But, maybe there's a left-hand, right-hand conversation going here because the college brings forward the suspension. So that means someone had to complain or file a formal complaint at the college and the billings go to MCP. So unless there's some sort of direct connection and communication, monthly or what have you, between both entities, then it's probably an after the fact when someone finally catches on that there might be something. And I don't know if there's impropriety regarding the billing because it could be something else, medically speaking, that is resulted in this suspension. So I really don't know. But I suppose there's probably that disconnect plays a role if we're talking about simply billing concerns.
Well, if you can earn, I don't know how lucrative ophthalmology is, but if you can earn $4.6 million, there should be a lot of Newfoundlanders trying to get in there, right? Who needs to be a ball player? Anyway, I just think the whole thing stinks to high heaven. Paddy, the second question I got, the MOU, the first committee, the ones the Liberals formed, are they still meeting and are they supposed to give a report anytime soon?
Yes. But it's a really good question because there's a couple of things we don't really know. Is our negotiations continuing? And if so, why? And what role does that play in this independent review? And what's the questions being asked? I mean, so there's a lot to fully understand, which is why I think it's a really good idea for the general public to see the House of Assembly reopened so we can get some answers on that front. Because if we're just if we're going down the path as prescribed by Premier Wakeham, then that does beg some pretty interesting questions about what's actually happening today. Have we changed the mandate for the current independent panel? Have they stalled negotiations pending this review? I don't know.
Because it seems that whatever report that they should continue that, and the report would come out eventually, and then if Premier Wakeham is going to move, by the way, I think he should be moving a little more quickly, getting that panel together. And it would be interesting that we would be able to see both reports together, before, let's say, even before March, so the public could get a really good look at this. But anyway, I think that first committee should complete its work. I hope they're still meeting.
I guess they are. And how valuable that might be, given the different direction that the current government is taking, it's for anyone to guess. But so we're going to get some sort of fiscal update next week from the Finance Minister. Premier Wakeham has said that they're going to finalise the terms of reference by Christmas and appoint a 3-person panel, which is exactly what the Liberals did, but wasn't good enough then. I don't know what changes now. Maybe the mandate of the review panel. I really don't know. There's more answers. Pardon me. There's more questions than answers available at this moment.
Well, let's hope the mandate changes. I wouldn't worry too much about getting international people. I would rather see local people with expertise, but a definitely change in mandate. Patty, were you going to comment further?
Yeah, I was going to say, as per Mr. Wilson, the fellow who resigned, is the mandate for the current panel was just so narrow. It was very highly constrained to just what was in the MOU. But, as opposed to some risk assessment and potential changes into the future, whether it be East-West Energy Corridor, whether it be federal government intervention or involvement with transmission in the province of Quebec, or the role the federal government might play in wheeling power into the northeastern United States. So there's a lot that is not in the MOU that needs to be considered.
Yes. Last thing I want to, the main topic I want to talk about, I guess, is I'll start with a little anecdote. There was a guy out one night looking for his keys in the bushes outside of his house. There was a street light there, right? Anyway, his neighbor came along and asked, "What are you looking for, George?" And George said, "I'm looking for my keys." And he said, "Oh, you lost your keys around here." And George said, "No, I lost my keys on the other side of the garden over there." And Buddy said, "Well, what are you looking here for them for?" He said, "Because it's lighter." And the moral of that story, I think, would be I'll apply it to what we've done about climate change. You remember Kyoto was 1997, right? What? They met and they looked at a goal of 5.2% below 1990 levels, and that was supposed to take place. The commitment was between 2008 and 2012. Now, if you look at that, you know, of course, it didn't happen, and we've had, I don't know how many meetings we've had since that. The last one, I guess, was at Paris. So I would say, I'll give an example of why it's not working, not just because governments won't take the necessary steps because people don't want it. As individuals, we were told that we should help things by the 3 R's: recycle, reduce, and reuse. Well, we take the easy route. We do pretty good at recycling, probably across the globe. And recycling is the least of those 3. I would say probably we're looking at between 5 and 10% if it was done properly.
Yeah, reduce is the key.
Reduce is the key, and reuse.
Yeah.
Reduce especially. But if you look at our societies and governments, the idea is growth all the time, right? It's been that way since God knows when, back in the 1800s. We haven't really changed that approach. It's too hard. I'll include myself here. We, as you said, we want what we want when we want it. We want bigger houses. We want bigger cars. We want more of this and more of that. And all these things, people relate burning fossil fuels. Fossil fuels is only one part of the equation. When you're building bigger houses, you're using more concrete, you're using more trees, you're using more of everything. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with anything bigger, right?
It is.
So it's... I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I'm way late for the break, so I got to get going. Final thoughts to you.
Well, I don't see much. Pollyanna is one side, and I guess Debbie Downer is the other. But from what I've seen, Patty, of what we've been doing with all these meetings, these governmental meetings and so on, and what individuals want and what they do you really see any hope that we're going to really reduce greenhouse gases before everything goes to hell?
Probably not, and that's a sad state of affairs. Very quickly, and I do have to go. You know when the Kyoto Protocol was signed?
1997.
December the 11th, 1997. This date in history.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh.
There you go.
Okay. Right. Yeah, thanks, Patty.
All right, Charlie. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye. Merry Christmas, by the way.
The very same to you, Charlie. Thank you. All
bye-bye.
Right. Bye-bye. Let's get a break in. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 2. Ramona, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. How about you?
I'm okay, too.
Yep.
Oh, dear. I'm just so worried about all the hate that's out there. after hearing that message that you received, it's really, really troublesome. You know, I wonder why those people are so hateful. Why? What happened to them in their life to be so hateful?
I don't know. But
It's
there's a lot of it going
frightening.
around. There really is. You know, people are angry for a variety of reasons, and there's lots of pressures on people's pocketbooks and other political policy decisions that people get quite up in arms with. But yeah, and that's one thing. But when there's just a difference of opinion, like I have no authority to do anything in this world. I don't write policy. I'm not a government official. So just disagree with me, which is fine. Like, I don't really care if people disagree with me, especially if they're willing to entertain a conversation about why they disagree. But just the automatic go to tell me how much you hate me, which is fine, right? As long as there's a few people around that love me inside my family, I can live with the hate. But wishing me dead, I just thought that was a little bit much. You know, I couldn't believe what I was reading.
That's actually over the top. I mean, it's so. Why has that person got so much hate in their heart? You know, I always question that. It's something had to. I mean, everyone is under stress. I know everyone deals with it differently too. But, you know, to hate that much, it's really troublesome. I knew someone who was very hateful. And I asked him one time, why are you so angry all the time? And he said, it's none of your business. You know, it's something underlining it, and they need help. They need it to get to the core. Our society needs a lot of help.
Yeah, that's
troublesome.
as a general term. Yeah, absolutely right. Look, and I can't speak to why one person or another is angry or hateful or whatever it is. But, you know, it also breeds hate, and anger breeds anger. And somehow they find themselves congregating, whether it be on social media or otherwise. And it just must be exhausting. Like, there's the emotion that is the most tiring is hate and anger. You know, so I mean, I can't speak for them, and to each their own. But you can send me whatever note you like if you want to tell me how much you dislike me, which is absolutely fine. But I do think it's fair to say that wishing me dead is a little bit much.
Yeah, that's a bit over the top. That's really troublesome.
Pretty much.
And you do so much for people and for the world, actually.
Yeah.
It's troublesome.
Anyway,
we can hope for the best. And I think, you know, we should be building more rehabilitation centers instead of more jails. Because a lot of people out there needs help.
Yeah, that's a fact. I really appreciate the time, Ramona. Thanks for calling this morning.
Yeah, I'd like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and also Happy Holidays.
The very same to you. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, someone's asked me to say what EOI stands for, that acronym. It's an expression of interest. Let's take a break for the news. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Let's begin this hour on line number one. Good morning, Bailey. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty.
Hi.
I'm calling in to discuss this Mount Pearl 2026 budget and its claim that it really has a focus on safety.
Okay.
I'd like to walk through a little bit of the timeline just to refresh your memory and the listeners. But back in December 2024, the community came together to ask the municipal and provincial governments, RNC, and other stakeholders to do something about the community safety problem in Mount Pearl. Following that, we were promised a community safety plan and some actions, and that came from Minister Davis, Mayor Aker, RNC. I think they spent the bulk of 2025 forming a committee, hiring a company, doing some public consultations. And then as the Mount Pearl municipal elections were kicking off, we heard from Mayor Aker that a draft community safety plan had been received by council. But now here we are in December 2025, and there's been no publicly released community safety plan. And this budget that is saying that it is safety driven has allocated $200,000 for community safety. But we don't know where that money's going. What is the plan? How will that be spent? I'd really like for councils to release this community safety plan and let us know where we're going with this.
I'd like to know, what exactly the plan is, I really do not know. All I saw was the news item that talked about so much money for this, so much money for that. But it's an excellent question as to exactly how they're going to spend the money and how many levers does a municipality even have in the big world of public safety?
I think there's a few. I think that we could invest in public lighting, certainly for our trailways. Maybe we come up with a plan for public spaces. So when that's looking at the private sector, the minimum standards for businesses wanting to operate in our public spaces. Maybe we look at some surveillance in public spaces. I mean, there was an incident at St. David's Park earlier in the fall. Maybe if we'd had a camera in that area, this would have been dealt with. There's certainly things we can do. And I think it's really easy for municipal council or others to say, well, this is a bigger problem than us, because it certainly is. But it takes action at all levels.
It does. I mean, I think you're absolutely. That's why I asked the questions, because I know you had some ideas. Public lighting is an excellent idea, no doubt about that. And cameras. I'm always torn on the camera issue as a deterrent to crime, because criminals are not even deterred by the thoughts of possibly going to prison. And cameras will be able to capture images and maybe be used as evidence when they go to court. But that's only after the crime has been committed. So I get the concept. I just wonder, does it actually play a role as a deterrent? And I guess that's an individual question for individual criminals.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that it deters, but I can speak to personal experience that it certainly helps in catching people that are involved. And so, my husband was attacked last year, and there was no public cameras at the public space where he was attacked, but it came down to residents on that street submitting their personal footage so that we could get these individuals.
Yeah, it's absolutely helpful in the world of catching criminals. And I do know when we talk about public safety, it's a prevention issue, it's a evidentiary issue, it's a prosecution issue, it's an incarceration issue. So it's everything from top to bottom. So I like your idea, and I really appreciate your overall question of, okay, if there's that amount of money for X, Y, and Z, exactly what is the plan? And how are we going to spend the money?
Yeah.
Sure.
Hoping you can get to the bottom of it.
I'll certainly give it a shot.
All right. Thank you so much, Patty.
Appreciate your time. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Let's keep going. Let's go to line number 2. Jason, you're on the air.
Hello, Patty.
Hi there.
I heard you saying something about Danny Williams, about the nickel or whatever it was. So I decided to do my own little work onto it, and I got about 30 pounds of pennies down there. Do you know how many pennies it takes to make a pound?
No.
186.
Okay, interesting. I'll
So
remember
that's
that.
$1.86, right?
Got it.
Okay. You know how many nickels it takes to make a pound?
No.
102. That's $5.10. So I phoned Nuclear Metals, and I asked them how much was it for a pound of copper. They said $4.40 a pound. From $1.86 to $4.40 a pound. So I wonder if I brought up 50 pounds of nickels, would it be worth more to me to have it destroyed?
I'm not sure. Well, and what's
Because
the point of
something's
that
not
question?
making
I'm
sense.
just trying to follow along here.
Right now the penny is worth more than the nickel.
Yeah, but the current nickels in circulation aren't pure nickel, though, either.
No, they're not.
They're not, no. So given that fact, I wouldn't know how to answer the question. And I don't think I was the one who mentioned Danny Williams in the nickel conversation. I believe the caller did. Because when the initial plan at Voisey's Bay was reached under the Liberal government at the time, I'm going to use 2001, 2002 as the date, Danny Williams was vehemently opposed to it. Then there was a bunch of delays and further negotiations, and then some, I guess, wrangling with Vale to see the $2 billion spent at, what is it, a hydrometallurgical plant in Long Harbour, which was 2008, I'm going to guess. So some additional benefits for Vale in consideration for building the plant at Long Harbour. And I think the ultimate point I was making is, you know, when the construction was ongoing, all the nickel that got shipped to Sudbury, Ontario or Thompson, Manitoba, we were told that every spoonful would come back. My question is whether or not that's happened.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I
I
really don't know.
got one more question, Patty.
Sure.
Just in case I miss something, I have to have a coffee in the morning. I might miss something. So you're from 9 till 12 in the day.
Mm-hmm.
How come I miss a half hour in the evening? You guys only go on from 9 to 11:30.
Yeah, I really don't know. So the producers could probably be the ones to answer that question. I don't know what gets hauled out. Maybe some of the breaks are shorter or something. I really don't know. I'll find out, though.
Be. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Okay, have a great day.
You too, pal. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, you too.
Yeah, I don't know. I can get an answer to that question because I'm not sure how that process works. I don't have anything to do with that necessarily. But, yeah, that's the issue regarding the whole nickel conversation. And it would be nice to know exactly what's going on. So there was, even in the time frame approaching the completion of construction, there was a big increase and then there was a crash in the price of that particular commodity. So I think, so we're talking about in the era of what is referred to, generally speaking, as a global recession. And there was lots of commodities took an absolute pummeling at that moment in time. So I don't know where we are now about the price of a metric ton of nickel. Don't know. But I would like to know if all the nickel that got shipped out eventually got shipped back, because that was part of the arrangement, part of the agreement. How are we doing on the telephone out there, Greg? How are we doing out there? Okay, let's get a break in. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. As per an emailer, we're talking about how much nickel is in an actual 5-cent piece. It's only 2% nickel these days. I didn't know it was that low. Anyway, let's keep going. Line number 1, Noreen, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning.
Hi.
I'm going to be talking about the government. I know government people and departments are really busy and stuff, and there's a new government formed, but I've been phoning in to old age security since November before my birthday to let them know that I will be turning 65 on the 17th. Now, I've been phoning constantly every other week to see how far it's gone ahead. I phoned this morning. The person I was talking to this morning told me I was not going to get no money this month. And we got to pay rent. We got bills to pay. I got pills to buy, right? I'm out of pills now, for one thing. And, it seems like they don't care about the people.
So why is it that you don't qualify for? Because I think the CPP, I believe the payment date this month is the 22nd. You turn 65 on the 17th. So why don't you get it?
She said it's not processed yet.
Okay, so it's a processing issue. Okay.
Right, because why I phoned them so early is because mine was supposed to be automatically switched over. Because where I was already receiving my spouse allowance and everything, right? Mm-hmm. Now I was paying 100% for all my drugs anyway, because we were making $27 too much. Now, I was talking to you about that before.
Okay.
Right? And that I never did get that straightened out. My MHA at the time didn't do nothing for me. I ended up doing everything myself, and I still couldn't get nothing fixed. I ended up getting more prescriptions, and I still couldn't get no percentage taken out because I was still getting too much. Like I said, why is it that some people are getting the same amount of money, can get so much off their pills, and the other person can't? I said, there's something gone wrong somewhere in the government. Now, me and my husband is here. We're living in a senior citizen's cottage. We got rent to pay. We got all our bills to pay besides that, because, yourself, you got your light bill and everything else. Mm-hmm. Why don't they try to have it all rearranged and everything for when you turn 65 instead of waiting till you turn 65? Then it can take up to 3 months after you turn 65 before you'll get any money or anything.
Yeah, so it's an important public service announcement here. So the recommendation, because for some reason, it's not automatic that when you turn 65, you get your CPP, which I don't know why that would be. The government knows when your birthday is. So the recommendation for people is 6 months prior to turning 65, you should start the process to ensure that you get it as soon as possible. For some people, it's only 30 days after they turn 65, they actually get their first check. But, it's sort of bizarre to me that they're even making people at the age of 64 and 6 months have to apply for CPP, which the government knows you're turning 65. So,
well, it's not the CPP.
Oh, I thought we were talking CPP.
I was getting CPP all along with my spouse allowance.
Okay, so what check are you applying for? Old age
I'm not
security.
getting none of them.
So, okay. So what are you trying to get? Old age security.
I'm trying to get it straightened up with my old age and everything because I had the two of it straightened up. I was getting my Canada pension when I turned 60.
Yeah, okay.
And I start getting my we call it spouse allowance, but if you got the check, it's at old age. I was getting the two of it since I turned 60.
Got it.
Right? And I did get it that year in December. But now, I turned 65. All that was supposed to automatically transfer over to old age because I was already told by one person that's working in there, because I've been living in Canada my whole life, and he asked me if I was living in Canada for 40 years. I said, I never moved out of Canada. I said, I was out of Newfoundland once, and that was it. But I said, I was on the mainland then. So they told me that it's supposed to automatically switch over, and I'd get my check on the 22nd of December. I phoned this morning. This lady tells me I'm not getting nothing in December because it's not processed.
Got it.
Now, do you understand where I'm coming from?
I understand where you're coming from.
Right? So why would one person tell me I is getting it and another person tell me I'm not?
Well, another very good question. I mean, the amount of incorrect information being shared by different departments of government is a real huge problem. CRA apparently is really bad at it these days. And then for people working in the same department, giving two different answers to the same question is mind-boggling.
Yeah, and even the man that does our taxes told me that it should automatically switch over and I would get my check.
Yep.
Right? So, like the government, one hand don't know what the other one's doing in there.
Unfortunately not.
And to get help from your MHA in Newfoundland is like trying to get a tree in your house by yourself if it's too big. You know what I'm saying? Because I tried to get them to help me with the other situation, and I found all that out myself.
Yeah, it shouldn't be this hard.
No, it shouldn't. And now we got through law, and my husband's money that's coming in for all our stuff, and he ain't got half enough coming in for it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's something that I can attempt to do to try to make things easier or better. But in this case, when it's simply a dragging of feet to get the application processed, I'm not sure what to tell you other than to highlight your concern and knowing full well that government needs to be more efficient with this kind of stuff. I mean, government efficiency is poor at the very best of times. But when we're talking about money, then they really do need to be more attentive. So I know your concern. I completely understand it.
Like, I literally broke down on the phone talking to her this morning.
No. I'm sorry to hear it, Noreen.
But it wouldn't have been so bad if we could have stayed in our own home. But we couldn't even stay there because he got a pacemaker, and he can't do no shoveling or nothing. He couldn't use the skidoo. He can't saw wood because we used to burn wood. And it was too far from the main road, like what we drive on, to get up to our house with our groceries net in the winter because we couldn't get up there in the car. So we had to move out of our own home into a place where we had to pay for rent just because we couldn't do nothing to stay there.
Again, I'm really sorry to hear that.
Well, thank you very much. But I thought there might be a way, because I'm even trying to get a hold to the MP to see if there's anything he can do.
Well, it's certainly the next step is one of the constituency assistants for a member of parliament. Absolutely, that's what they're there for, to do work on behalf of Canadians, and that means you. Yeah.
Well, I figured I'd phone let you know, but I've been at it ever since November, before my birthday and after my birthday. I've been at it. So now I got to pay for my own pills that I got to get, because if I don't get them, I am on pills for my depression and stuff, and I'm out of them.
It's a terrible set of circumstances. Look, if you make any headway with whoever you get to speak with at an MP's office, let me know, will you, Noreen?
Yes, I will.
I wish you good luck. Stay in touch.
And thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah, man. And just fair warning for folks who are, approaching 65 and wanting to access your CPP, you really need to start 6 months in advance, whether it be with the paper form or the online application. Let's go with line number 2. Daryl, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
Not too bad for an old guy.
Good.
A beautiful day out there. We got no snow falling, which is nice for a change.
Yeah, I mean, big swing in temperature, but I don't know what it's like out there now, but when I was coming to work, it was pretty slippery.
Yeah, no, that's all starting to melt now. It's gone up to 0 or +1 and going to hit +9, which is nice.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
So I'm going to stir your pot a little bit this morning.
Okay.
I'm a townie, my whole life. I grew up in St. John's, and you turn on the news now and you hear about all the crime that's going on, all the armed robberies and the murders and the assaults. And of course, the latest one now is the 2 women, almost beat to death. And it comes down to these people that are roaming our streets. And you had a lady on there a couple of weeks ago said she looks out her door, she looks out now, it's like a zombie apocalypse. They're walking up and down the streets down the center of town. Supposedly, the government puts them up in a house. I know that for a fact, and they pay for them to be in a house by themselves, which I don't think is a good thing. I mean, these people are medicated, and they're paranoid schizophrenies, and they're everything else. When I was growing up as a kid in St. John's, they were locked up. Now, our government decided that that's not a good thing. Someone decided. And here we are now. You turn on the news a couple of nights ago, one of them forgot to take their medication, and we got 2 people fighting for their lives again. There's a big red building on Waterford Bridge Road. Everybody's familiar with it. It says vacant. Well, why don't the government look at that as an institution again and put them in there where they're medicated, make sure they take their medications, and they're not out on the street. You go down Water Street yourself. I don't know if you've been down there. Every second person walks up to you is looking for $5. And I don't know about you, but I think that's embarrassing during the summer when we got all these cruise ships coming in. People come from all over the country, and they're steady. They're lying in the streets. And someone needs to look at the things that were done back then, and maybe somebody decided that's not working. So put them in a house, and I know for a fact they pay $2,500 a month of your taxpayer dollars. They got their cigarettes, they got their cell phones, and they're out there bumming money for their drugs.
But who's they?
What do you mean, who's they?
You say they are getting, being put up in a house and given this amount of money, and so I'm just wondering who they is, or who you're referring to. And number one, we can't just lock people up because they have a mental illness.
Well, no, I agree. You can't lock people up if they have mental illness, but if they're out on the street and they're a danger to other people and themselves, not taking their medication, and there's a lot of them out there. They were locked up years ago in the 60s and 70s. I mean, they were. I don't know if you know the institution. There was one here in St. John's, and they were looked after. They were given their medication and made sure they took their medication, right? But now, I mean, this one here, their family was on their bleeding heart. He didn't take his medication, so that gives him the right to beat 2 people almost to death.
Nobody said that.
No, I think. What?
Nobody said that.
No, nobody said it. I'm saying it. I mean, once again. I mean, 2 years ago, we had a woman down in Lanny Place stabbed a police officer. Family was on her saying didn't take her medication. So we trusted these people living alone to take their medication. If they don't, I don't know how good your memory is, but about 25 years ago,
it's pretty good.
A fella killed a bunch of people or killed a guy on a bus. Started eating him. For he never took his medication. So, as society, and there's a survey going around from the federal government now asking people, are you feel safe in your community? And I'm sure 90% of the people are saying no, because there's so much crime in this city, and then you got that on top of it. Do you walk Water Street, Paddy?
Yeah, of course. I live in the east end of town.
And you walk Water Street. Do you see any difference now than 20, 25, 30 years ago?
Yes.
Yes, and we do. It's the homeless. It's like they're constant, right? And I was told by a Salvation Army officer that a lot of them are coming in from other provinces. Now, people got bleeding hearts. They give them money. The Salvation Army officer told me that they got their meals to go up to the gathering place. They got a place to stay, but they're coming up to you asking you for money for this, that, and the other thing. And we all know. I mean, we're not stupid. That a lot of it is going into in drugs, whatever, alcohol.
People can choose not to give. I mean, that's a personal choice people make. Like I would only, for instance, we see people who are panhandling around, for instance, where I grocery shop, and I won't give them any money, but I'll buy them a sandwich. So that's the kind of approach I take personally. But the big topic that you're talking about, this 32-year-old man who's been charged with very serious crimes, and there's one woman in critical condition. I think it's a bit more complicated than you're making it, though, Daryl, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm only going by what I read and what I heard, right? And then the family was on there. I mean, saying that he probably didn't take his medication. So, but from what I've seen around, Patty, and I've been down around downtown, is they're down there and they're trusted to take their medication. I mean, there's a guy down there in front of Marie's. He's fighting with himself all the time. Sometimes across the street over by the sub shop. There's another guy in there stood up on the street. They're going into where the Walmart is too on Kelsey Drive. I mean, he's fighting with himself all the time. So it's only and another one there by the village, it's only for them to just step off the curb. And if you're driving down there, I mean, you're going to tag him. The guy by the Avalon or by the Walmart, he's drinking beer all day long. Cops drive by there all the time. They don't stop and tell him stop drinking beer. Now, if you went up by your door drinking the beer, they'd give you a fine. Right?
Yeah, so the fellow who's in the median there at Kelsey Drive, he's actually fairly calm and quiet. I've interacted with him in the past, just because, I mean, I can see that intersection from the parking lot where I work. Just back to the 32-year-old story, though, for a second, because no one says that, because he didn't take his pills, we're giving him a free pass, because I don't think anyone's saying that. And if the family refers to him as a victim, what I will say, and what I said off the top of the show, is this is a distinct failure of the system. And why do I think that? Is because there was a newly created community treatment order some years back. And so a psychiatrist has given a designation to that individual to provide mandatory and involuntary care if a person has a severe mental illness, is at a risk of hurting themselves or others. The problem here, Daryl, is that he was released from this designation, and the family didn't know anything about it. So as opposed to the RNC Mobile Mental Health Crisis Team, they knocked on his door. He said, I don't want to talk to you. So consequently, they don't have the authority to go in and do anything with or for this fellow who's been charged. His name is Mitchell Rose. But had he been under the community treatment order and was still under it, this probably wouldn't have happened, because the authorities can indeed involuntarily take him and medicate him. So that's the biggest problem here, is nobody knew, except for Mitchell, who obviously is in no sound state of mind, in some sort of state of psychosis. What do you think is going to happen? Bad decisions, and including these very serious crimes he's been charged with, but the system just dropped the designation. That's the biggest part of the story that breaks my heart.
And Patty, there lies the problem. You're absolutely right. There lies the problem. The system failed them because no one was notified. So once again, I mean, our system is broken and it needs to be fixed. So maybe they're fine to be by themselves if they're in this program. But once they get off this program and don't take their medication, when they don't take their medication is when they're a problem. I don't know if you've ever taken medication and figure, I'm good now, I don't need to take it anymore. We're all like that. I mean, I don't need to take that penicillin because my flu has gone away. And of course, you stop taking it, it comes back. When they're in that program, yeah, they're being checked. Everything is, all the boxes are ticked. But like you said, they let them out, nobody notified. So and this probably would never have happened had he been kept in the system. So, and that's a problem with a lot of stuff we got in our society. It's just people just kind of throw their hands in the air, like nobody follows up anymore, right? And that's just the way things are. And that's the changing times. And I guess we just have to all to deal with it and move on with life, right?
But I think the focus needs to be on the system. This fellow, this man, I mean, had he remained under a community treatment order, this very likely would not have happened. Very likely.
I totally agree. It probably would never have happened. He was living a normal life. He wasn't, but once they stopped taking their medication, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with it. You probably are. I mean, they got voices in their head telling them to do stuff. And I mean, I'm not. I don't take medication for anything. I'm lucky, one of those lucky people. But I've been around those people, and they hear voices in their head and it tells them to do stuff. I've seen them fighting with themselves. I've talked to them, probably same as yourself. But once they stop taking that medication, and then things change, right? And unfortunately,
there's a lot of misunderstanding about schizophrenia out there as well. There really, truly is. For some people, simply that diagnosis means that person is a dangerous individual, when that doesn't have to be the case. And interestingly, there's someone who's coming on. I think they wanted to come on. They used to sit on the board of the Schizophrenia Association. So we'll have that conversation. But the way we talk about mental illness is sometimes gets a little bit out of hand for me. Like, just locking someone up because they have a mental illness just doesn't even make any sense. It doesn't treat their illness. It doesn't make anybody safer. So it's how we treat and the continuity of care, and for other family members or other loved ones to know what's going on with you when you do have the potential to make bad decisions. That's what happened here. So this community treatment order should have never, ever been lifted, by the look of it and by the results of the actions he took in this apartment building. Daryl, I got to get to the break, but I appreciate making time.
No sweat. Thanks, Patty.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, let's get that break in. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 1. Mike, you're on the air.
Hey, Patty. How you doing?
I'm doing okay, thank you. How about you?
Pretty good, boy. I felt compelled to call today because there was a public figure in Newfoundland. For the record, I live in Montreal now, but I am a Newfoundlander through and through. And his Facebook post kind of angered me, right? Like his emotions toward the entire situation of this, situation we've had with Mr. Mitchell Rose, who unfortunately suffers from some serious mental illness and has been diagnosed with schizophrenia. And he put harm on 3 individuals. And Mr. Shelley was, adamant that the family didn't try harder to get him help, and we know that's really not the truth. And secondly, the blame game is not going to help solve future incidents like this from happening. And unfortunately, I have quite a background in this because I have a child, who still lives with me, and they have schizophrenia. Thankfully, they're in recovery, and they've been 3+ years doing well. A once-a-month injection can do wonders in helping them turn their lives around. So that's the first and most important thing to get someone who's suffering from schizophrenia is this injection, is this drug, and is the help. The problem, Patty, is a circle of care loss. Like, we won't allow someone who's mentally unstable to take the stand in a court of law because of their state. However, when it comes to their mental health or their physical health, because they're over the age of 18, and 19, 20 is right when schizophrenia tends to develop, just like it did in Mr. Rose, it did in my child at the exact same age. We need to have better circle of care laws, meaning someone who's a family member needs to have the ability to commit their child or their loved one, because they can't make the decision. As I said earlier, they can't go on the stand and testify because they're not mentally stable. Then why are they mentally stable enough to decide, sorry, I don't need help? So now they end up on the street. They end up into substances because that's really what they try to do to mask their illness. Now you're compounding the issue with substance abuse and things like that. So if the circle of care laws don't change, we're going to continue to hear people like Mr. Shelley blaming families and blaming the person who committed the act. And listen, this person is going to face some serious time in an institution. I don't know if you remember a story many years ago, probably 12, 13 years ago, out in Western Canada, when a man on the bus who suffered from schizophrenia thought the guy in front of him was going to attack him, kill him. So he took matters into his own hands and cut his head off. I don't mean to be too graphic, but that is what happened.
That is exactly what happened, too.
Yeah, and he spent 7 years in a mental hospital recovering. And this is exactly what's going to happen to Mr. Rose now. And let me say this first, please, because I forgot to mention at the beginning. My heart and my sympathies go out to the family that have been hurt. Man, I've been through this, Patty. I know. I've seen 6 cops barreling in on my house to help someone. And you know what? They're not well trained. They don't know what they're doing either. There's too many people that don't have the education, Patty. And I don't mean that in an ignorant way. I mean, they're just not schooled in it. Unfortunately, I got schooled through school in the hard knocks, you know. But when my child ended up with this illness, man, I wasn't going to let my child freeze on the street. I wasn't going to let them disappear just because they had an illness. It'd be no different than leaving someone with a broken leg out on the street. Like, come on. We don't do that. We shouldn't do that. They need loved ones to care for them. And that is what got my child through it. If someone wasn't there for them, they could be dead now. But now they're leading a good life. So schizophrenia isn't the end of the road. So people need to know that, right? Now, these people who have been harmed by that person with schizophrenia, it could have been anybody. It could have been you or me, Patty. It just depends on who was there at that time when they went through that massive psychotic episode. And I've seen that happen. And it's not pretty. And when your child is an adult and they're strong and big and burly, what are you going to do? And you can't fight them back, because if you do that, you're only going to compound the situation and expedite problems. Because typically schizophrenia people want to stay alone. They're afraid of people. They're delusional. They're paranoid. So they isolate. So they're typically more of a harm to themselves than they are to the general public. And that's a fact. Anybody who doesn't believe me, just look it up. Okay, I really don't have time to be citing those things. Unfortunately, Patty, schizophrenia doesn't involve one part of the brain. It involves all parts of the brain. The frontolimbic network, it controls their emotional regulation, their impulse controls, and their ability to link actions and consequences, right? When they have extreme psychotic episodes, they don't have any awareness. They don't have any understandings of their actions. And, you know, if I can be truthful with you, before my child developed this, I was coaching someone who was a psychiatrist, and I'm not going to name names, but they know their stuff. And when this person did what they did out in Western Canada, just digressing back to that story a little bit about the man on the bus, I was pretty upset when I heard he was released after 7 years. I thought, my God, someone's dead, and all he got was 7 years. But it was that conversation that changed my view. Thankfully, it changed my view, because a few years later, obviously, I went through this personally. I'm still grappling with it, because every month there's a reminder that without this injection, this could turn the other way again. And unfortunately, only 35% of people who have schizophrenia make it, Patty. The rest of them end up in bad situations.
Yeah,
I've seen it.
Of course, the big part of the story is, of course, that people were hurt and injured, and one critical, and that's terrible. But what led up to that should be part of the conversation. This is not bleeding heart stuff. This is an assessment of the actual reality on the ground. If a psychiatrist thought he should be part of the community treatment order protocols, then for people around him who love him, mom and sister or whoever the case may be, for them not to be told, and so consequently to understand that now the risks have been heightened, for Mitchell to be a risk to himself or possibly to others. So the fact that he was left to his own accords with the complete inability, unmedicated, to make good decisions, this is a system failing. It is. And that's not letting Mitchell Rose off the hook. That's making sure we don't let the system off the hook.
Correct. You're right, Patty, and we got to be able to distinguish that line, right? There's two issues here, right? Anyway, I just wanted to call and talk a little bit about it like that. You know, their decision making and the paranoia behind things, the delusions, all of those things combined affect different parts of the brain, like the amygdala and the hippocampus, right? You know, the prefrontal cortex, right? Which, you know, really affects decision making and the understanding of the consequences that link the decision together. I don't mean to sound too medical here, but unfortunately I've had to learn all this stuff because I want to know if something happens, what the symptoms are, right? But look, if anybody out there is wondering, please, if you see your child at 18, 19, 20 starting to isolate, I didn't catch the signs, but it was 3 weeks all alone in the room, and then all of a sudden a statement about thinking their friends are hacking into their phone and stuff. Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah. There's the paranoia start. The paranoia starting. That's how it started. And my child was wearing a letter when he played on a hockey team. He was popular in school. He was good looking. He had a girlfriend. He had a job. Like, he was doing everything that every person at that age should be doing. And whammo. So now, all that friends network, like, people don't realize how it affects the family as well. There's a third dimension to this.
Of course.
Like, you telling me that my mental health wasn't affected for those few years, that I just could do nothing for my son in psychosis? Think about that.
Oh, listen, we've had these types of conversations.
You're still trying to make a living, and you're still trying to keep a roof over your head. And, you know, like, people don't realize there's so many dynamics that go into it. We have a new mental health hospital, which, you know, I was very glad to see. But we've got to connect the patients directly with the associations. Like Schizophrenia Newfoundland and Labrador needs to be in the basement of that hospital. And when a patient needs direct help, they need to be able to get up an elevator, get to that patient, and help with them in that fashion too. Because the nurses in that are very busy doing what they need to do inside there. So these extra supports, believe me, will really, really help. We need to start being a lot more proactive. But like I said, we need to get after government to change the circle of care laws. If the circle of care laws don't change, if I can't have the legal right to know when my child is hitting psychosis again and they're refusing to take their meds, that sort of stuff, come on.
Right.
Jesus, that's a sign, man.
Yeah.
You know, and that's when I, as the parent, have to have the legal right to have my child committed. I know in 5 or 6 weeks they're going to come out of hospital a different person. My child was trapped inside the mental hospital during COVID. I had to go down when they were starting to recover and wave to them from outside. and get a text saying, "I love you, Dad," when I knew they were starting to come around.
It's extraordinary
stuff. It will turn around. They might hate you for several weeks, but it will turn around. Stick by them.
Mike, I really appreciate the time. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, take care, buddy.
You too. Bye-bye. Oh, let's take a break. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Oh, I was just about to click on Keith on line number 2. We wanted to discuss mental health. Look, it's a tricky conversation, and there's no doubt about it. And like most other things, the tricky ones, the emotional conversations, they're the ones that forever and a day have been left off to the side or left into the corner, and consequently, they don't get entertained, and what happens? Nothing good. Status quo, and I think we can all agree status quo, not the best thing. Let's keep going here. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, David Gill. You're on the air.
Oh, hi, Patty. How's it going?
Great today. Thank you. How about you?
Good. I want to phone in and talk a little bit about that Australia ban. I'm associate professor over at the Faculty of Education, and I think we've talked a couple of times about similar things, but I heard you talk about it this morning. I thought I'd phone in and maybe share some thoughts.
And I appreciate you doing. David, I think the last time we talked was about the MIT Media Lab report about using ChatGPT to write SAT essays. Is that right?
Yes, I think so, something like that. But
okay.
I phoned in a few times. I think, yeah, and I think we phoned. Maybe we mentioned. Well, about this time last year, the province came out with a total ban on cell phones for certain age groups, and I can't remember if I talked about that or not. But it's interesting now that we're seeing, we're going from like school bans to age level bans, and so it's interesting. It's interesting, and it kind of falls in my wheelhouse here. But to see this trend. So the last number of years...
David, just before you get your thoughts going here, because of the time on the clock, which I'm generally unaware of, do you have time to be put on hold for the 11 o'clock news? We'll come back, make sure we have a fulsome conversation?
Oh, yeah, whatever works for you.
Okay. So, given the fact that we're just a minute shy, let's just set the stage to remind the folks what we're going to be talking about after the news. The country of Australia, the first country in the world, in the modern world anyway, to ban social media application from youth under the age of 16 for the obvious well-intentioned purposes of protecting youth, because there's been some really detrimental and well-understood impacts on youth, whether it be anxiety, depression, child luring, sextortion. So there's a variety of things that happen in these digital evil corners. That's the conversation for me, is how do we best protect youth, whether it be the role the government plays, the role that parents play, the role that the big tech companies play, which seemingly is impossible to get to them because why? Subscribers and clicks are money. So that's what myself and David Gill are going to talk about right after the newscast. So I'm going to put you on hold, David, okay?
Yeah, no problem.
I want to make sure that we give him plenty of time to talk about it because it's way too important. Very quick check-in on the Twitter box before we get to the newscast. We're VOCM Open Line. You can follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. Plenty of interesting notes. And just one more reply, all verbally, is reference to qualifications for CPP and old age security and those types of things. Appreciate the information that so many have sent along, whether it be Sam or Jennifer or Pamela or Lloyd or Craig and Judy. Appreciate that. And let's get a break in for the news. When we come back, we're talking the social media ban in Australia. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go and rejoin Dr. David Gill on line number 1. Dr. Gill, you're on the air.
Oh, hi. How's it going?
Best kind now. Thanks for the patience. Where would you like to start when we talk about the Australian 16 under ban on social media?
Yeah. No worries about waiting. I know my place. I'm not more important than the news. Listen, no, I just wanted to just touch base with you. You mentioned a lot of the things before we went to the news about the reasons why, but sometimes the public or people don't understand the research behind it. And there were some interesting pieces of research kind of tied, like I was talking to before the break, related to the school bans that we've been seeing. And over the last couple of years, this kind of rippled through the world, where we saw like the UK started to do bans in school, and then multiple states, and then provinces and things like that. There's a difference there, right? So those are outright bans for certain ages. They can't have the phones for various reasons and things like that. But now it's interesting, right? So now we're seeing these, under 16 bans, and I think Denmark is looking at it, which means other people are going to be looking at this. But this can be a contentious issue with parents and children and other people as well. But over the last number of years, I think the research is pretty solid, and the Australian fact sheet and things that the government put out, they cited a really it's a pretty substantive study out of the UK, talking about developmental sensitivities and things like that. And in the research world, right, there can be lots of studies. We see lots of studies, but the quality can be a bit iffy, right? But this one seems pretty solid, and it's what's important. This is a big study, right? 84,000 participants for one part, and then 17,000 for the longitudinal study. And basically, it's reinforcing this idea that at these ages, your 11, 10, 12, adolescent kind of ages, that social media in particular, not technology, right? And this is important, right? So social media in particular is having an adverse effect. Now, they're not the only ones that report on this. I don't know if you know this book, or Jonathan Haidt is a psychologist or I can't remember. I better not say. He is something. I think he's a psychologist down in the States. He had a book out last year called The Anxious Generation. A lot of the research, the papers aren't accessible to the general public. But if people wanted to have a really good analysis that was readable, his book dives in and analyzes and synthesizes this stuff. And I think the nuance that people need to understand, I can't tell people what to understand, but I think what's important is that there are developmental ages. They differ for boys and girls, and the effect is different, and the content is different. So if you look at the research that Australia is using, and you look at the stuff that Jonathan Haidt and others are doing, there's also I sat on a panel last year. There's a think tank out of where is it? It is Toronto Metropolitan University. What was Ryerson? If you look up them and Screen Break, it's a really big think tank, and they've gone across the country, and they're trying to determine, how these policies are working in schools and things. And they lean on that same kind of research. So the idea really, the nuance here is that, in that adolescent age, it's not, a full ban on technology, but the social media is really affecting young girls, right? And we're seeing, increases in, depression, anxiety, all those kind of things, because that the social media is really kind of on the same wavelength. It attracts young girls. It amplifies, everything we know about the stereotypes of beauty and all those kind of things, and competition, and it can be a real, let's say, a toilet whirlpool for them. Boys are different, and I haven't dug into it, but I don't know if the Australia ban really focuses in on boys. Boys are get into addiction online, and typically through pornography and games, online gaming, and it still has detrimental effects, or can, but in a completely different kind of stream. So yeah, it's interesting to see this, and it's interesting to see the policies coming out, but like you mentioned, I'd be interested to see the accountability and the uptake and those kind of things, because anecdotally, the school bans, and we see this all the time, right? A big policy was announced, it's great, whatnot, but anecdotally, and maybe you've heard through your networks and things like that, here in the province, I think is really hit or miss. I think it really depends on the school, the teacher, the students, and all kinds of things like that. So, I don't know.
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think the research is pretty clear on how it impacts boys and girls differently. For girls, you're right, it's about body shaming and what have you, and those quests for the impossible, those types of things. And then the concept of cyberbullying, which doesn't make any difference what gender you are. And for boys, it's not only that, it's also the way people are getting radicalized, and violently so. So that's been another impact for youth, which is extremely damning and alarming. Even if you don't use social media, all the evils and ills of the world are available in other parts of the internet. It's the connectivity, it's the interactive features of social media that makes it different. Whether or not this is going to work, probably not, given the fact that the workarounds are already well understood. There's apparently chat rooms down in Australia where they're giving advice to each other about how to get around this ban. So that's also part of it. But when I hear people say, they have a problem with the concept of government overreach here, as opposed to thinking about what's the best we can do to protect youth from unnecessarily exposure to a variety of things, sextortion and the sharing of intimate images in social media, and the anxiety and the depression and the violence and the cyberbullying. I don't know why that's not the focus as opposed to what the government policy is.
Yeah, the government overreach is kind of interesting, but I think this happens when we always have these changes, I think, in society. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to draw too many parallels to smoking industry or tobacco industry, but we knew for years that cigarettes were causing cancer. But I mean, to drive that home and to get changes and to the companies weren't going to change that, right? So at some point, I think the Australian fact sheet and what I've gathered from the media is that a part of this is to turn it back on those companies and for their responsibility. I mean, a few years ago, you probably know, I do believe it was Facebook, got exposed for basically, psychologically tuning their platform to be as addictive as possible to young girls and things like this. Reddit, I do believe in some of the news that I've been reading there is contemplating, a legal action against the government for overreach. But like you said in your introduction, I would probably bet that that's more about their revenue stream than them worried about government overreach for any other kind of reason. So it's interesting though for me, for a researcher who's been doing this for a while, to watch this trend, right? Because when again, I'm an educational technologist, so my job is to utilize technology in education, but it's got it's got to be super focused. It's got to be evidence based. There's got to be something that benefits, right? Rather than just this idea that with AI, right? So we'll just throw AI in there and everything will be great. When actually the research in that, like we talked about before, is maybe people that are learning how to learn should not have everything done for them.
Yeah.
That's probably not a good thing, right?
Probably not. Last one for me. So these giant tech companies, of course, they're profit-driven businesses and their business model is well understood, but it's not necessarily about the technology. It's about the science of human beings. They understand what dopamine means and they know how to get it going for you. And so see your product or your content shared or liked or positive comments associated with it, it keeps you coming back. It's an addictive property, just like a gambler would be addicted to a VLT. They know how it works. They know the damage they're doing, but they don't care. Why? The money is extraordinary. The market value and the rich or the wealth for those who are investors and those at the helm is undeniable. And that's what they do. They know what they're doing. And that's a real crying shame to know out loud that these companies that have such enormous impact on our day-to-day lives, for youth and adults alike, they know what they're doing. And they know the harm they're causing.
Well, they have full psychology departments.
Of course they do.
Yeah. So, it's very interesting. So, I just wanted to have a little chat and maybe throw some of those things out there and maybe give some resources for people that, would like to know a little more about the actual research, but might find some of the studies a little overwhelming. So that one, The Screen Break from Toronto Metropolitan University and Jonathan Haidt's book and things like that.
Yeah, and I mean,
again, to be very cautious as a researcher, like causation is very, very hard to establish, but I think it'd be safe that we're pretty clear on this one.
Yeah, no doubt about it. David, I always appreciate your time. Thanks for doing it.
All right, thank you. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay,
and,
bye.
like the cell phone ban is different than what we're talking about here, because the cell phone ban in school was they talked about the concept of cyberbullying, but that was more about class disruptions than anything else, right? All right, let's get a break in. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to the clinical lead with healthcare infrastructure at NL Health Services. That's Dr. Greg Brown. And good morning, Dr. Brown. You're on the air.
How are you this morning?
I'm doing okay. Thanks for asking. How about you?
Good.
So let's get into it. The new ambulatory hub facility up on Stavanger Drive is now open. I haven't had a chance to visit yet to get a up close and personal look at it. But my first question would be, what's the benefit to the patient?
So the benefit to the patient is better access, more convenience. Those are the two main ones. So purpose-built space with lots of parking, easy access. And it's allowed us to expand the size and number of clinics and the size and number of a whole bunch of outpatient services.
Well, given the size and the space and the different services and clinics, are there people there to help you navigate? Because sometimes it sounds very fundamental. You walk in the door, you find the clinic, you're off to the races. But for people who are unwell or are nervous or are anxious about their health, are there someone there to help you walk you through it?
So we do have some folks at the front door that are bringing people in. The signage is, there's some more signage that's actually coming. Once you get in the facility, the wayfinding and the signage is excellent. And what's happening this coming week on the 16th is that our outpatient blood collection facility is going to open, and that's right in the front of the building. The outpatient hub is towards the rear of the building.
Blood collection is interesting because when I got a requisition from a doctor not long ago, the first appointment I could get was like about a month from now. So are we moving blood collection technologists or technicians from other places to staff up this ambulatory hub, or are these new additions to the system?
So short answer is both. So the Majors Path blood collection facility will close, and that's going to be moved to the Unity Hub as of Tuesday, December 16th, so this Tuesday. We will have, it's an expanded facility, so it's bigger than the outpatient facilities that we have. So yeah, there'll be more access. And what I'd tell people to do is, on your appointment reminder, for something that was booked after December the 16th, the new Unity Hub will be there on your appointment reminder. Anybody who's making appointments that come up after the 16th, the appointment will be at the new blood collection center. So look very closely at your notifications when you get them as to where this stuff is going to happen.
I'm not telling you anything here you don't know or that the listeners don't know. Like when we talk about the establishment of the collaborative care clinics or the primary care teams and staffing levels throughout the healthcare system, how about staffing for all the different offerings inside this new, I think you called it the Unity facility?
Yep, so the building is the Unity Health Center, and we're the NL Health Services outpatient hub. In there is going to be the urgent care center, and the blood collection is physically separated as well. But it's all part of this Unity Health Center, which is the building itself. Look, staffing is a challenge, but we're going in the right direction. We have a third the number of open positions that we had 2 years ago. But recruitment, the health professionals don't grow on trees. They're a valuable resource, and we're recruiting and retaining and going in the right direction. So most of the positions up here are already full. It's a pleasant place to work, so that helps as well. And it's purpose-built, so it allows not only patients to have better experience, it allows staff to have a better experience, be more efficient, and just have a better day on the job,
And a better day is better healthcare delivery, I would assume. Dr. Brown, what the fact that the Atlantic provinces have now shared an accreditation and a licensing, how has that benefited people in the province here with the ease with traveling inside the Atlantic provinces?
Yeah, so especially for facilities that rely on locums and transient staff, that's made that process easier. A lot less paperwork and things are required. Having said that, we're far more interested in having permanent staff because that's a better model. Okay, so I think the jury is still out on that. To be perfectly honest with you.
So you say that doctors and other healthcare professionals don't grow on trees. There's only 17 medical schools in the country. We can only produce so many doctors through various disciplines. Some of the things that have been done on the national front, like the conversation that's moving towards, easier locums with a standard of accreditation and licensing in the country, and then some immigration numbers for fast tracks to permanent residency for foreign trained doctors, with 1 year experience here. Is there other things you think we should be thinking about? Because you're right, we can't grow doctors and or NPs or licensed practical nurses or social workers on trees. So are we on the right track here?
We are. This is a multi-pronged approach, okay? So we have a lot of dedicated and talented individuals working on a whole bunch of fronts to address these issues. So part of it is, as you said, looking at the licensing requirements. Now, everyone got to remember, the licensing is strict because it needs to be. This is, these folks, myself included, have a tremendous responsibility to our patients, and it's important that we vet training and abilities and things like that. So the licensing is complex, but it probably could be streamlined a little bit from what it is. But physician and extenders, having nurse practitioners and a group of practitioners called physician assistants are all things that we're looking at and expanded roles for all of them in our system.
Yeah, and psychiatric nurses comes to mind as well. So I appreciate you making time for the show this morning, Dr. Brown, because there's obviously a lot to talk about inside the healthcare delivery system. So a final message to those who may indeed be using the services at the ambulatory hub on Stavanger.
Yeah, so the message is that phase 2 of our openings start on Tuesday. So that's ultrasound, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, our brand new pain clinic, and blood collection. Okay, and that blood collection will be moved from Majors Path to the new Unity Hub. So check your appointments because your next service may not be where your last service was.
Appreciate your time, Dr. Brown. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. It's Dr. Greg Brown, Clinical Lead for Infrastructure, NL Health Services. Let's get a break for the news. When we go back, Keith is next to talk about mental health. Then Sean wants to talk about billings done by doctors. Don't go away.
Glenn. This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back. Let's go to line number 2. Keith, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you doing?
Excellent today. Thank you. How about you?
Not too bad. Doing a great show again there this morning.
Thanks.
I had to call in, Patty, because of a couple of previous callers with regard to the Mitchell Rose incident that's going on in St. John's right now. There's some things I'd like to speak to. First of all, I'll give you a little brief history of myself. I'm a registered nurse. I've been working 34 years now as a registered nurse, and I have a fair bit of experience with mental health clients. Currently, I'm working as a registered nurse on the inpatient mental health unit at Western. But I've also got experience with the mobile crisis response team and the flexible service community treatment team. And there's a few things that I think that made me want to call in. I think the first thing was the caller, I think his name was Darrell. Just carte blanche, everybody's branded the same because you got schizophrenia or is the way you are. And it's so far from the truth is not funny. First of all, schizophrenia is no different than diabetes or cancer. There's varying degrees to it, and there is treatment for it. But, I was expecting him to go down the route of we're going to start frontal lobotomies again. That's just, I'm like, we're not going down there. But the second caller, the guy from Montreal, this is a guy that sounds like he's got lived experience, and he's a lot closer to what's going on. I think he understands what's going on, and he's just hit the nail right on the head with the problems in the system. So, again, a further history of myself. Back in 2007, when the new Mental Health Care and Treatment Act rolled out, there's a group of us that went into St. John's to do what was called Train the Trainer. We were taught by Dr. John Gray, who was the lead consultant on the new Mental Health Care and Treatment Act, because our old act was archaic. It was from the 60s. So in the early 2000s, they decided they need to change this. So they consulted this guy, Dr. John Gray from Ontario, who had consulted with another different health authorities to write their acts, and he was down, he did ours. And when we were finished, he felt that this was probably the best Mental Health Care and Treatment Act in Canada at the current time, you know. So my job was to understand the intent of the act and learn and come back and train disciplines back in our area back here. So we did that, and I come back and I've been working at that now. I no longer teach the act anymore. I taught to a lot of disciplines there in West Coast. I taught School of Nursing, the CONA. We didn't do the peace office, though. The RNC and the RCMP decided they were going to do their own training. But there's been a couple of incidents, that's happened, and this is why I think this guy from Montreal really hit the nail on the head. It's because the act itself is a really good act, and I don't think there's gaps in the system. I think the problem is enforcing the act is where the problem is. It lays with the people that are enforcing it. And just a couple of things. The first thing is when we hear, and I heard this again this morning a couple of times, that they have no, the RNC or the RCMP have no authority to bring someone in if they're not willing to come voluntarily. That's so far from the truth. It's not funny. We had an incident back here on the West Coast, I think it was probably around 2010, 2011, when Christopher Savicki ended up killing a man in Kippens, and ended up, he had a bipolar disorder. I think it was bipolar disorder is what he had. He was unwell, and he ended up assaulting a guy and ended up killing him. And he was locked away at the Waterford Hospital for a number of years. And this family, of course, had suffered grief of losing a loved one. At the time, the RCMP and the RNC were both training their own authorities, and they decided that they needed someone else to come in to help with the training. So I actually went to Deer Lake and did the RCMP in Deer Lake. And when I got talking about what police officers can or can't do, they were dumbfounded by what I was telling them. They were saying, what do you mean we can just take somebody? So I'm going to quote you now from the Mental Health Care and Treatment Act. Now, it talks about there's 3 ways someone can be brought to a hospital for an involuntary assessment. It's not an admission, it's an involuntary assessment. And one is a doctor can write a first certificate, which gets you brought in. The second one is a judge can order. And the third one is apprehension by a peace officer, Article 20 under the Mental Health Care and Treatment Act. And I'm going to read it to you, Patty. It says, where a peace officer has reasonable grounds to believe that a person, A, has a mental disorder, and B, as a result of the mental disorder has caused or is likely to cause harm to himself or herself or another, or is likely to suffer substantial physical or mental deterioration or serious physical impairment, and refuses to submit to a psychiatric assessment, and it is not feasible in the circumstances to make an application for an order under Article 19, which is the judge's order, the peace officer may immediately apprehend the person and convey him or her to a facility for an involuntary psychiatric assessment. So when I brought this up to the RCMP in Deer Lake in 2014 or 15, when it was there, like, God, we didn't know this. Since this act rolled out in 2007, it be reviewed, and this is part of the legislation that has to be reviewed every 5 years. And when they reviewed, they found some things wrong and changed it, because obviously, everything is not perfect when you do something. And one of the things that they did do is they developed a mobile crisis response team, and I'm sure you're familiar with that, and I've worked at that. And this is just it's a collaborative partnership between the RNC and Newfoundland Labrador Health Service. And what it is, it's a healthcare clinician and a plainclothes peace officer that will go to a call for a wellness check. And what happens on these calls is that, and I've done this, I've been part of that, is that the healthcare clinician is the one who decides if the client can be apprehended or not. It's not the RNC or the RCMP. They don't make the decision. They enforce the law. And if the healthcare clinician feels that this person, in fact, should be detained for an involuntary psychiatric assessment, then the RNC or RCMP's job is to bring that person forward. So when I hear that, we got no authority, that's so far from the truth, it's not funny. Now, it may be their perception of what goes on, because I've had incidents at our hospital, and I know that Mitchell was on a community treatment order, and these orders are good for 6 months, and they have to be rewrote every 6 months. Sometimes the doctor feels that the client is doing well enough, and he may no longer do it. But I was working one time at the hospital, and we had someone brought in under a CTO because he didn't get to his injection, his every 3-week injection. And when the police officer looked at me and he said, how long are we going to be doing this stuff, like dragging this guy in or giving his needle? And I looked at the policeman and I said, how long are you going to be giving speeding tickets for people doing 150? Like, this is the law in Newfoundland and Labrador, and you need to understand that. You're not doing me a favor, you're not doing this guy a favor. So I think the biggest part of the problem right now is education. And further to that, Patty, when you talk about, people got families' hands were tied, I don't think family members understand that anybody can go to a judge and say, hey, you need to have this guy, apprehended. Here's what's going on. He has mental disorder. He was on a CTO. That got stopped. He's not taking his meds. Can we get an order to have him brought in for an assessment? And if the judge feels that, what is legit, they can order it. And not only that, Patty, in the Mental Health Care and Treatment Act, Article 7 talks about protection from liability. That's even for a tort by a police officer or anybody, who is administering the law and apprehending someone and having brought in. So I don't think families are aware that they can go to a judge and have an order to have this person brought in. And I don't think the police forces fully understand what the law means and the intent of the law. And I think that's a bigger part of the problem than the act itself, right?
Very informative. So, why? I'm just trying to follow along here. So, is the assertion that law enforcement don't actually understand the Mental Health Act? Because when the RNC Mobile Mental Health Crisis Team responded upon the request of the Rose family, they said that they could not do anything about it beyond offer help, and if Mitchell was unwilling to accept help, that was all they could do. As opposed to if you're under the community treatment order, there was authority for involuntary hospitalization and further evaluation. So is that what's going on?
Well, there's a misunderstanding, Patty, because there's two different things there, okay? So under a community treatment order, you're not being apprehended to, most times, you're not being apprehended to be admitted. What you're doing is you didn't go for your injection. You didn't show up for your medication treatment. Now you're being apprehended to have your injection, then most likely being released back into the community. The second part is that you're talking with someone who's not under a community treatment order, but the family feels they need a wellness check. What should respond or what's supposed to respond to this is the Mobile Crisis Response Team is a healthcare clinician and an RNC officer or RCMP officer, depending on where you're to. The RNC or RC or the peace officer's job at that time is to listen to the healthcare clinician. So if I went to see Patty Daly and I'm trying to do an assessment on you and you're refusing to talk to me, as a healthcare clinician, I'm going to say, and this is what should happen, I can't do an assessment. He needs to be apprehended so the right people can do an assessment and see if he needs to be admitted or released it back into wherever he came from, right? So I think part of the job is that, and it's black and white. If they got reasonable grounds, they can, and I'll read it again for you. The peace officer may immediately apprehend that person and convey him or her to a facility for an involuntary psychiatric assessment. It's black and white. I don't know what the misunderstanding is, but I mean, it is in black and white. If you have a mental disorder, and as a result of that, you may deteriorate physically, mentally, you may harm yourself, you may harm somebody else, you can be, and you're refusing to come voluntarily, you can be apprehended. And I don't know where the mix-up was coming from. And, and again, like I say, back in 2013 or 14 when I went to Deer Lake, every RCMP officer in the room was like, what do you mean we can just take them in kind of thing, right? So I think there needs to be a better education program out there so that everybody fully knows the extent of what they're able to do and have these, like, this should never happen, and it's going on all the time. We don't even hear other stuff that goes on until it becomes so severe that someone is killed, unfortunately, or someone ends up in the hospital in critical condition. But, I mean, with education, I think the peace officers have a better understanding of their job. And hopefully you don't see this stuff going on, right? So, yes, they can apprehend. And again, when I was trained in 2007, part of my training was the intention of the law, the intention of the act, and the intention of each article. And Dr. John Gray, who was the chief writer on this, told me that the intention of this is that the RNC or RCMP have the power to say, okay, you have a psychiatric illness, we can't do a good assessment there. Now you're going to the hospital for an assessment to be done by a healthcare professional, a psychiatrist, who is best qualified to say, yay or nay, whether you need to be admitted.
Keith, really appreciate you doing this morning. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Take good care. Stay in touch.
Yeah, you too. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, final break of the morning. When we come back, Sean's there to talk about doctors' billings. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Sean. You're on the air.
Yes, great show, Patty. How are you today?
I'm doing okay, thank you. How about you?
Not bad, buddy. Dr. Sean Buckingham calling. I'd like to compliment Dr. Brown on his new clinic and great ideas about healthcare in the province, as well as Dr. Pat Parfrey. As you know, he's an icon in the province, and he spearheaded the future plan for a 10-year plan to renovate healthcare as it is, and now it's starting to bear fruit. My calling this morning is secondary to some doctor who billed $4.9 million, who was an ophthalmologist, I believe. What I don't understand, and maybe because it wasn't given out in transparency, is why he was suspended by a medical board. The medical board's function is to promote safety for the public in terms of, you don't want doctors out there killing patients. Okay, that's the bottom line. It functions. It has the ability to function autonomously, and it cannot be sued. So the first thing you would want to know is, what this guy did. Now, this guy is a genius. He graduated number one in every class he attended. Okay, top 1%. Okay, and we're lucky to have him. Okay, there was a GP out in Grand Falls a while back who made $1.87 million. Nobody questioned that. When I was working at Bay Legend, my maximums were about $350, $360 a year. So MCP hired a separate auditor just for me. So I don't know if they did the same in this case or what the hell happened, but I do know 4.9. As a doctor myself, I know that's a bit much. I know if that guy was out of Florida or California, he'd have billings up in the 100, 120 million, no problem. So my advice to him is to seek greener pastures. And my second thing is that, Patty, I'm worried about this guy. If he's putting in this amount of work, he's going to drop dead soon of a heart attack or something because, if he's seeing that many patients, Patty, it's too much.
But we're all guessing now because nobody knows why he's suspended. If it's a billing issue, okay. If it's something else, all right, because there's lots of things a doctor can do to run afoul of the college and consequently get suspended. So until I know more, I really don't know, the ins and the outs of this. I don't think anybody does other than folks who have reviewed the issue and brought forward the suspension. Sean, just as a technical matter, you keep calling yourself a doctor, but are you a doctor?
Oh, for sure, yeah. I've reapplied to the colleges across Canada, and I've been accepted at two. The medical board here refuses to take me back because I'm a pariah, and because enough time has elapsed now that I've been pardoned of all my offences, and so, according to the Pardons Canada, I'm a solid citizen again, whatever that means. And at present, I have two major. I was in hospital for half a year, Patty. I just had surgery on my colon. I took half of it out because I had cancer in my bowel. So, I'm sitting here in the house taking Metamucil. And I've put two complaints in with the medical board since September. And I haven't heard anything back. And these are serious complaints. And the question is, can the medical board, not respond to me because they don't like me or because I'm a pariah, or can they just say, screw him?
I can't answer that question, obviously, because I have no idea what the process even looks like or feels like. Simply because of the time, I'm going to sneak out one more call. But when we find out more about Dr. Dang, I suppose we'll be talking about it again. You take good care.
Well, I give my best to Dr. Dang, and I wish him best of luck, Patty.
Thanks, Sean. Bye-bye. Oops, that was a bit quick. Let's last word goes to line 3. John, you're on the air.
Good morning, young man. Thanks for taking my call, Patty.
No problem at all.
Okay, I just want to try to clear up a little bit of confusion about a concert that we are having at St. Gabriel's Hall in Marystown tonight in support of the Happy Tree. Because of the ongoing problems with the water shut-off down here with a changeover in the chlorination, we had to cancel our show last night, and we moved it up to tonight. So we just want to make sure that people understand that it's not canceled, that it is on the go for tonight. It starts at 7:30. Doors open at 7. And we have like theater at the Hall group. We have like choir. We have Salvation Army Band, and we have lots of the local talent that is here to support the VOCM Happy Tree. So we just want to make sure that folks understand, Patty, that the show is on the go for tonight.
I'm glad to hear it. So the water issue has been rectified.
Well, the water's still off here as of the present time, but it's due to be rectified at any time.
Okay, that's the good news, because if it's not, will that mean a further postponement if they don't get it figured out?
Regrettably, it will. So we'll just tell folks to pay attention to Facebook and any other media that we can access, and we'll let them know accordingly. But as it stands right now, we are a go for tonight.
Yeah, and fingers crossed you are a go for tonight. If anything changes, you get in touch with us. We'll try to put it out there for your listeners, or our listeners.
I certainly appreciate it, Patty. Thank you very much. Have a great Christmas.
The very same to you, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So the concert is a go. That is the good news. Just a very quick one. And several people have sent this along. And, at one point I was told I was afraid to mention the made-up Peace Prize that the president got at the Kennedy Center when they did the FIFA Final World Cup draw pools. So this is what happened today. So the American Department of Justice dismissed the case against 2 defendants who were convicted in a FIFA corruption case. FIFA is corrupt. So is the IOC, and everybody knows the corruption that is rife within FIFA. So when the little bauble was given, now all of a sudden 2 convicted FIFA members have now been seen their case dropped. A federal case being conducted by the Department of Justice. It's a wild world. All right, final check-in on the Twitter box. Or VOCM Open Line, follow us there. I see sports trending, the Blue Jays. Oh, I wonder what that entails here today. I did see out of the corner of my eye, maybe Bichette is close to signing a $300 million deal with the Dodgers. I don't know if that's true or not, but anyway. Email address is openline@vocm.com. All right, good show today. Big thanks to all hands, all the callers, listeners, emailers, and tweeters. You are all right. We will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, Greg Smith, and Matt Barron, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.